In the course of our existence, we often find ourselves bound by invisible threads of attachment, strings woven by the ego that hold us in place. These attachments, though often painful or unsatisfactory, form a comfortable cocoon that shields us from the discomfort of change. The familiar, no matter how limiting or unhealthy, becomes a sanctuary. As Nietzsche once said, the most common form of human stupidity is to prefer to remain inside the shell of what is known. The ego clings to these shells, believing that they provide stability, even if the stability is built upon a foundation of suffering. We remain in situations we know are toxic because they offer the illusion of control. It's as if the suffering we endure becomes a currency for the false sense of security that we receive in return. In a toxic relationship, we endure the pain because the familiarity of it feels less terrifying than the idea of being alone. In a job that drains us, we stay because the monotony offers us the safety of routine, even though it stifles our potential. In friendships that no longer resonate, we continue the charade of connection because the discomfort of confronting the truth seems harder than maintaining the lie. This attachment to the known, however, is not a conscious choice. It's a survival mechanism. The ego, in its quest for control and predictability, convinces us that what we know is better than what we don't. The unknown is a vast ocean of possibilities, but to the ego it is a place of chaos and uncertainty. The comfort of the familiar, no matter how painful, feels like a life raft in a stormy sea. The ego fears the unknown because it cannot predict the outcome, and thus it clings to what is familiar, even if it means clinging to pain. But as we journey through life, the soul begins to whisper a different story. It calls us toward something greater, toward growth, evolution, and healing. Yet, the soul's call often clashes with the ego's desire for control. This internal conflict can be disorienting, even painful. The soul longs for freedom, but the ego fears the loss of its grip on the familiar. In this tension, we may feel torn between staying where we are, where things are known, and stepping into the uncertainty that promises growth but also demands courage. The philosopher Socrates taught that an unexamined life is not worth living, and yet most of us live unexamined lives not because we are unaware, but because we fear what such examination might reveal. The truth is that growth requires us to confront our attachments to people, places, jobs, and identities that no longer serve us. It asks us to question the very foundations of our comfort zones, and to recognize that our attachment to the known often keeps us stuck in cycles of mediocrity, pain, and self-limitation. In the stillness of self-reflection, the truth begins to surface. We start to see the patterns, how we settle for less than we deserve, how we resist change out of fear of the unknown, how we allow the ego's demands to override the soul's desires. The first step in breaking free from these attachments is awareness. Without it, we are blind to the ways in which we are complicit in our own stagnation. We must learn to see ourselves as we truly are, not as the ego wants us to see ourselves. This awareness is often uncomfortable because it demands that we take responsibility for our choices, both conscious and unconscious. As Carl Jung observed, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. This privilege is not granted through the avoidance of discomfort, but through the willingness to face it. It is only by stepping into the unknown that we can evolve into the person we are meant to be. But this journey requires surrender, the surrender of control, the surrender of the ego's grip on the familiar, and the surrender of the false identities we have created for ourselves. We must be willing to let go of who we thought we were in order to become who we are truly meant to be. This is where the paradox lies. Growth is both painful and liberating. We cannot evolve without discomfort, for it is discomfort that forces us to confront our limitations. The philosopher Heraclitus famously said, "The only constant in life is change." And yet we resist change because we fear the unknown. We fear losing what we have, even if what we have is no longer serving us. But in order to grow, we must embrace change, not as a threat, but as an opportunity for transformation. The soul knows that to move forward, we must shed the old, even if it feels like a death. The process of shedding is not easy. It requires us to face the fear of loss, the fear of the unknown, and the fear of failure. It requires us to confront the parts of ourselves that have been conditioned to seek comfort above all else. But in this process, we also discover a deeper sense of strength, resilience, and self-worth. We begin to understand that our true power lies not in what we cling to, but in what we are willing to release. As the poet Rumi reminds us, "Don't grieve. Anything you lose comes round in new form." Our attachments to the familiar often stem from a fear of inadequacy, the fear that without these things we will not be enough. But this is the lie of the ego. The ego convinces us that we are defined by our relationships, our careers, and our possessions. Yet the truth is that we are not defined by what we hold on to, but by what we are willing to let go of. In shedding the old, we make space for the new, and in that space, we find our true essence. To live fully, we must be willing to step into the unknown, to confront the discomfort that comes with change, and to trust that the journey will lead us to exactly where we need to be. The unknown is not something to be feared, but something to be embraced. It is in the unknown that we discover our true potential, our purpose, and our capacity for growth. The journey toward letting go of attachments is not linear. It is not a simple path of enlightenment, but a winding road that challenges us at every turn. There will be moments of doubt, moments when we feel the pull of the familiar and the ego's grip tightening around us. But it is in these moments of tension that the soul's voice becomes clearer, urging us to trust, to leap, and to surrender. As we release our attachments, we begin to discover the freedom that comes from being fully present in the moment. We no longer rely on external circumstances to define our happiness or sense of self-worth. We learn to find joy in the journey itself, rather than in the destination. As Lao Tzu said, "A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, and that first step is always one of surrender, surrendering the need to control, to cling, and to fear." The act of letting go is not a rejection of what was, but an acceptance of what is yet to come. It is a recognition that every ending is merely a prelude to a new beginning. Every time we release something, whether it's a relationship, a job, or an identity, we create the possibility for something new to emerge. This process of release is not a loss, it is a transformation. It is a chance to reinvent ourselves, to discover new facets of our being, and to embrace a life that is more aligned with our soul's true purpose. In the end, the greatest gift we can give ourselves is the ability to release the familiar when it no longer serves us. To let go of the attachments that bind us is to step into the full potential of our lives. It is a gift that requires courage, but it is a gift that brings with it a profound sense of freedom and peace. And when we learn to embrace this freedom, we begin to live a life that is not defined by what we hold on to, but by the infinite possibilities that arise when we finally let go.